Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you're in movie culture and you like seeing people pick movies apart, please consider subscribing. Today we're going to be talking about The Craft Legacy, a new movie that is not a reboot of The Craft, but in fact a curiously conceived sequel that only features one of the original characters for exactly 3 seconds of screen time at the very last frames of the film. The movie is written and directed by Zoe Lister-Jones, a TV and indie film vet, and has developed a rep for being an SJW version of The Craft. SJW is such a fucking weird acronym, my god. But before we get into the plot, it must be said that this is a movie that looks to have been constructed solely to tick relevant boxes for inclusion, an overabundance of woke dialogue, and a try-hard approach to accurately depicting modern teens and their personal preoccupations, right down to a sequence with heavy stepsister porn vibes. This version of The Craft follows a group of teen witches who form their own coven when they finally find their long sought after fourth member, a girl named Lily, whose mother has moved her to this new town so she can cohabitate with her boyfriend, David Duchovny, and his 3 large sons. Together, the girls are able to unlock their full magical potential, but eventually they push the limits of their abilities too far with tragic consequences and some late game swerves about the source of Lily's true power. Now, I want to say off the bat that I find it truly admirable that the filmmakers behind this movie did not choose to simply retread everything the original film did. However, I did find the scope and overall tone of the movie to be so different from the original that it begs the question of why didn't they just make a new movie in a similar vein as The Craft without having to brand it as The Craft. Now, this is not going to be a video about me complaining about sequels or remakes or any of that type of stuff. I'd really personally try to judge each movie that's like a reboot or a remake or whatever on its own merits, rather than denigrate an entire subsection of modern filmmaking. The truth is, I think that sequels and remakes and reboots can be good. In general, they just tend not to be. And also, to be fair, I chose not to rewatch the original Craft before watching this. I've been doing that a lot with movies, and every time I have to review something or cover something, I watch a bunch of movies like in preparation and research, and sometimes I'm finding that I feel like it actually casts sort of a negative shadow on the new product, rather than helping me understand it better, so this time I just kind of went in cold. I am operating on my hazy recollections of the 1996 movie The Craft that I've seen like 3 or 4 times, but I do not have like a fresh, recent perspective on it. All that said, I think there are a few key reasons why this movie doesn't work, and basically none of those reasons are that it's too woke. First of all, the core group of girls is very poorly characterized. It's one thing to make a big deal that your cast is marginally more diverse than the original, but having a black witch and a trans Latina witch is essentially meaningless when they're not written like full characters. Lovey Simone and Zoe Luna are both just there, with a couple of lines for each designed to peacock their respective perspectives without actually developing and presenting those perspectives whatsoever. By default, Gideon Adlin gets the most to say and do by being the unnecessary comic relief, but even Kaylee Spaney as the ostensible lead Lily is woefully underwritten. Her past and circumstances purposely left blank to better sell a torturously ineffective twist in the final act. I understand that Lister-Jones wanted to explore magic in the film as an expression of diverse identity, like what makes each of these individual girls special is what makes them powerful, but in doing so, her take on the material is the victim of superhero movie prevalence, slowly poisoning every other genre in popular culture. When the girls' abilities do manifest, it rarely feels like an actual exploration of Wiccan culture, even a fantastical movie version of it, but like a backdoor pilot for a new version of Heroes or a bad X-Men spinoff. By the time we get to the unfortunate climax, it feels more like a young adult novel adaptation for Netflix than, you know, The Craft. And finally, we have to talk about Timmy. Timmy is a bully who picks on Lily early in the film, but the girls use magic to literally make him woke?
No, women with an X.
They do smaller versions of this elsewhere with other school bullies, and the way it's presented, it makes it feel like one massive, unfunny joke. But it's not just a throwaway gag. Timmy's arc, if you can call it that, swallows up much of the second act, as the spell helps him to genuinely shed layers of toxic masculinity, embracing his own feelings, opening up about being bisexual, and becoming real friends with the girls. But then Lily takes it too far and doubles up the spell to get him to like her, and the next morning, he kills himself. Now, it should be said that it is revealed that Timmy's character did not actually kill himself. He was murdered by the film's true villain, David Duchovny, Lily's stepdad, who turns out to be a warlock, sort of like a midway point between Julian Sands and Jordan Peterson. It turns out that he killed Timmy because Timmy, one of his many teenage acolytes, wasn't manly enough and no longer fit his program of weird men's rights activist paganism. But for me, the problem with the movie is that everything from Timmy's death onward, including the revelations about David Duchovny's character and about what this really means for the story as a whole, seems to be really cheap. Now again, I had not seen The Craft in some years, but what I remember about the movie was that it explored magic as a way to talk about power and how power can corrupt even the marginalized if used ineffectively or allowed to sway one's inner morality. This movie completely sidesteps pretty much any kind of commentary you can make about the girls and the way they use power, because they use it frivolously and for fun throughout the movie, and then when they run into a situation where it seems like their power has caused an actual tragedy, they don't really do anything or learn from it. They're just given like this typical boogeyman character that they have to team up and fight, and it completely sidesteps anything about like themselves or them learning or them growing or developing or anything. It makes this weird kind of semi-statement where it's like power is cool and can't do anything bad to you, and only bad people with bad intentions can do bad. And as long as you're good, if you do cool things, it's okay. And like I get that what they're aiming for is like a more strong vibe about like girl power or something, or like I guess I feel Mr. Jones is trying to move away from the original film, which obviously devolves into women fighting each other, to them teaming up to fight some kind of outside force.
Girls do get it, don't?
But the problem is it overpowers the rest of the narrative. Like, they put more creative energy into developing Timmy and making what starts out as like a gag.
Yo, he called himself cisgendered in 7th period today.
Like literally a gag, into being like a fully developed character arc for a character that dies. And Timmy by himself is more fully realized and explained and drawn out than any of the 4 main characters, the 4 protagonists combined. If they had spent even half the energy they put into making Timmy a sympathetic figure, into making the other characters actual characters and not just like passive stand-ins, this would be a pretty decent movie regardless of anything else that got wrong. Like, on a very, very base level, when you make a movie, if you can make characters that are likable, relatable, fully realized, they feel like three-dimensional people, you're willing to follow those characters through any kind of plot. Like, if the plot's messed up, you like the characters, so you don't care. You're interested in them, you want to see what happens to them. So to skip that step and then put all of that energy into a side character who starts out as like a cartoon bully and ends as this like tragic figure, I don't understand where they're going with that. I understand where she was going for thematically, but I don't understand it functionally in the way it's executed. And all of this boils down to my main problem with the movie, which is that why does it exist? I understand why studios want to make sequels and remakes and reboots of things that people already know. I get that. I know that that's like a financial reality thing. But this movie, as it exists, is kind of pointless. Like, you could have either remade the movie with younger people or whatever, or done a full sequel that actually involved the original characters to a larger extent. And instead, it's like this sort of reboot thing that vaguely continues the original story, but doesn't resemble it in any meaningful way. And the other question is, like, who is this for? Like, I feel like the young people this movie thinks it's aiming towards, like the young, woke, you know, diverse, Gen Z, whatever, like, they've all seen The Craft. Like, they have, like, access to movies that existed before they were alive, and they watch them, and they like them. If anything, all the people I've seen on the internet in the wake of this movie have been young girls complaining that these girls are no longer goth, who don't understand why it looks like a Forever 21 ad. Like, it's clear that the original Craft is something that matters to people, even generations that came after it. This is sort of like a poor man's version of it that appeals to basically no one. I think some of that boils down to the fact that, like, in the 90s, it was easier for middle-aged filmmakers to pretend to understand teen culture because teen culture was a little more broadly bisected. And, you know, today in 2020, that's more difficult. You could be in your 30s trying to write about teens and have no fucking idea what's going on because modern internet-based culture is just more impenetrable. And then what you end up with is a movie where people talk weird, and it seems authentic to older people, but to younger people, they would just be like, we don't talk like that. That's not what we do at all. This doesn't make any sense. It's distracting, and it's weird. And if that's the sole reason you made the movie, to bring The Craft to a new audience, it's a new audience that already has The Craft. They don't need, like, The Craft Light or whatever. Either way, this just did not seem to work in any way, shape, or form for me, and I think for most other people. I do sincerely hope that there's someone out there for whom The Craft legacy actually gave them something, because it did nothing for me. Not entertainment value wise, not even like train wreck watching wise, it's just kind of there. If you want to watch it, like, you can, like, it's out there, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it. That is me on The Craft Legacy, a movie that I was pretty disappointed by, in so much as I went in with any expectations whatsoever. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. If you do subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos. We've got one more spooky video coming before Halloween is upon us, and then after that, we'll be back to, I don't know, talking about non-scary movies, I guess. Thank you guys for watching. Hope everyone's staying safe out there. Be good to yourselves. Wear your masks. Don't eat too much candy. Or do. Have a blast. I'm on a diet, so I can't. So eat candy for me. Eat candy for Dom.